So Malechem Mishnah Yomi is in chapter 8 of Gittin Mishnah Vav. Kol ha'arayot, all of the forbidden marriages, she'amru, where our sages said, tsarotehen mutarot, the co-wives are allowed. So first of all, what does this have to do with Gittin? This is Yibum, and this is actually the very first Mishnah in Yibum. We'll see in a minute that, like we learned yesterday, there are very harsh penalties for a woman who gets remarried based on a flawed get, at least according to Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Akiva, we'll see. So too, in today's Mishnah, we'll see a similar situation that results from a problem with Yibum Chalitza. And in this case, going way back to the very first Mishnah of Yevamot, the case was where a man had two wives. He passed away with no children. Now, both of these wives are up for Yibum or Chalitza. Yibum to marry the surviving brother, or Chalitza to be released to marry someone else. But the issue here is that one of these two is an erva, an arayot, somehow related to the surviving brother. So what our sages taught in the first Mishnah of Yivamot is, since one of the two wives surviving the deceased husband cannot marry the surviving brother, so no one has to do Yibum, no one has to do Chalitza, they are free to go remarry someone else. And indeed, neither of them can marry the surviving brother. So back in our Mishnah, so all of these cases, halchu et sarut, if the co-wife, the wife who was not an erva to the surviving brother, but was the co-wife at the time, ha'elu v'nisu, they went and married somebody else, v'nimtzu, and then later we found out, elu ailoniot, that the erva co-wife, the wife who was somehow related to the surviving brother, was actually ailonit, which is a biological situation where a woman is unable to have children. And we've mentioned this in Yevamot and Ketuvot, that there are certain signs where she's not so womanly. She doesn't have the normal biological characteristics, the voice, the skin of a normal woman, and it turns out she's not able to have children. Now, they didn't know that at the time of the first marriage, so that first marriage is considered to be a mistake, a taut. So it turns out now we know this woman who was an erva to the surviving brother was never truly legally married to the first husband, the husband who passed away, the deceased brother. And therefore, the co-wife of this erva was the only legal wife to the original deceased brother, and she should have received Yibum or Chalitza from the surviving brother. There was no impediment to that because she was not an erva. So the din for that woman who did get remarried on the assumption that she had been the co-wife of a legally married erva to the surviving brother, teitze mizeh mizeh, she has to be divorced from both, meaning really she can't retain her marriage to the outsider, the non-related man, and she cannot go and marry in Yibum, the surviving brother. And all of these penalties are levied on her, all of the issues we talked about yesterday, that she loses out on ketuvah and all sorts of other issues. Now, this Mishnah is according to Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says even the Isser Lav of Yivama Lashuk, of a woman who should have gotten Yibum or Chalitza marrying someone else, he says even that Lav we take extremely seriously, and therefore all of these penalties would apply, at least rabbinically, in such a situation. The Mishnah Zion is a little bit similar. Hakonis et Yevimto. A man marries the widow. Now, his brother had passed away with no children, and now she's fallen to Yibum, and they go ahead and they get married in Yibum. Mazel tov, it's a Yibum. And now the co-wife, the second wife from that first marriage, v'niset lachar, and she goes and marries someone else, as we assume she's perfectly capable of doing, because the Yibum has been taken care of by her co-wife. V'nimtzet zot, and now we find out this woman who did the Yibum, who was married to the brother in Yibum, she ailonit. Turns out she grows up, and she's not a normal woman capable of having children. So it turns out the original marriage to the deceased brother was fictional. It was not really a binding marriage. It was a mistake. So what's the din? Teitze mizeh mizeh. She has to leave both, meaning she cannot stay married to the outside man, the unrelated man, and she cannot go and do and become married in Yibum by the surviving brother. And all of these other penalties and consequences apply in such a relationship. Now, it's quite difficult to say our sages are holding a woman accountable for the biological childbearing ability of her co-wife. It seems quite unfair. The Mefarshim point out that really the co-wife, they're living in the same household, sharing the same husband. She's really the one in the best position to realize if there's something biologically wrong with her co-wife. And also, she could simply wait a few years, because if a woman doesn't develop the normal characteristics of a woman by a certain age, she's considered an Eilunit. So if she just waited a few years before getting remarried, it would clarify if there was a doubt about the Eilunit status of the co-wife. To happy, healthy children and grandchildren. Sei gesund.